What the hell, Cooper? This isn't the Sonic Adventure re-review. I know, I just figured I'd whip out this quick review of Godzilla vs. Kong, since it's been over a year since it came out, and it's the only mainline movie in the series that I haven't done a review on, apart from the Netflix trilogy, which I don't think I'm ever gonna watch. It's also approaching close to 2 years since my last Godzilla review. This year also marks the 60th anniversary of the original King Kong vs. Godzilla, which is still one of my all-time favorite Godzilla movies. So it seems fitting finally looking at this movie. Kind of like King of the Monsters, when I heard Godzilla vs. Kong was happening, I was hyped, but I also wasn't following the production super closely. I guess at this point in time, I was just like, yep, this American Godzilla is a franchise now. Can't wait to see the future movies. Though I will admit, with the 1962 original being one of my all-time favorites, I was definitely more excited for this than I was with King of the Monsters. When it was announced that it would be directed by Adam Wingard, at first I was like, cool. Then I saw his directing history, and afterwards I was like, oh. Basically, his directing credits include some oddities. I like You're Next just fine, but with other movies like the Netflix Death Note, for example, I'm not even a Death Note fan and I thought that movie looked like crap. However, upon seeing that Wingard is actually a pretty openly huge Godzilla fan, I still had faith in him. Like, sure, he has directed some stinkers, but knowing how big of a Godzilla fanatic this guy clearly is, perhaps this Godzilla vs. Kong movie could turn out to be the best film of his career. And upon seeing the movie, I was 100% right. However, not only is this sort of a soft remake of the 1962 movie, and a sequel to King of the Monsters, it's also a follow-up to Kong Skull Island. I think I should definitely give the King Kong movies a look in the future, but I thought the movie was pretty alright. It had some pretty fun monster action, and oh my god, Kong's finisher move when he rips the guts out of that one monster, holy shit, that was so awesome. It reminded me a lot of when Godzilla had his own finishing move in the 2014 movie. I love that shit. So, Godzilla vs. Kong. Spoilers ahead, by the way, but then again, the movie's been out for a solid year. Well, the plot takes place 5 years after King of the Monsters, so Godzilla and Kong are the last two known titans on Earth. However, Godzilla starts going on a new reign of terror as of late. Thankfully, the other remaining titan, a giant primate named Kong, has been kept under watch, and eventually gets recruited to fight off Godzilla. Meanwhile, Millie Bobby Brown returns as the favorite enamored Godzilla fangirl, meaning she's one of the only humans who believe that Godzilla's change in behavior must have been provoked by something. And she's been getting her info from a podcast run by an ex-employee who worked with the company from the last movie. So Millie and a friend decide to team up with the guy to track down the source of Godzilla's changed behavior. During all of that, Godzilla and Kong fight a few times, and each fight is super godlike. This movie has some of the best monster action out of all the previous ones. Also, if it sounds like I'm moving kinda fast with this plot summary, that's actually because the pacing in this movie is the fastest out of all the others. So anyways, Millie and the rest of the gang eventually discover that Godzilla's changed behavior has been greatly influenced by the existence of a Mecha Godzilla, which is being controlled by a guy inside of a Ghidorah skull? Huh. During this, the other group with Kong decides to travel to a new location called the Hollow Earth in order to find a weapon that could help defeat Godzilla. They discover one of Godzilla's dorsal spines was made into an axe. Good timing too, because just as they find this, Mechagodzilla gets activated, leading to Godzilla traveling to Hong Kong because of it. So Kong returns to Earth, and the best fucking fight of the whole movie happens. And it ends with Godzilla beating the hell out of Kong. Like, holy shit, he even dislocates his shoulder. Godzilla's fucking brutal in this movie. It's probably the evilest that this version of the character has ever been. Well, you know what they say, karma can be a bitch. Because Godzilla is then ambushed by Mechagodzilla, which results in Godzilla getting his ass handed to him. This means it's up to Kong to step in and rescue the king. I also love how Kong has to smack his dislocated shoulder onto a building just to get it back in place. It's so ridiculous and gruesome, but I fucking love it. Seeing Godzilla and Kong team up to destroy Mechagodzilla is so badass. It even ends with Godzilla using his atomic breath to charge up Kong's battle axe, which completely obliterates Mechagodzilla. Afterward, Kong and Godzilla decide to just peace out. Well, at least neither of them are sore losers about this. And that was the plot of Godzilla vs. Kong. All in all, it's pretty decent. Not a bad framework to explain why Godzilla and Kong are fighting each other. As I said before, this movie has the fastest pacing out of all the other MonsterVerse films. It's just under 2 hours, which I know a few fans were upset by, but I actually consider that a positive thing. I get that people wanted more runtime in the movie for potentially more monster fights, but in reality, making the movie over 2 hours would not have meant more monster scenes, mainly because that shit would have been way more expensive than it already is, and that added runtime would have just meant we had to spend more time with the humans. And while the human characters are fine, they're not that great to begin with. Don't get me wrong, I still like some of the returning characters from King of the Monsters, and I do like the deaf kid who has that strong bond with Kong. I think using sign language to communicate with Kong is pretty genius. Plus, the girl's adoptive mother is a pretty good character too, but everyone else is kinda just alright. They get the job done in their scenes, but they're not super engaging, which has actually been a pretty big issue with these movies since the 2014 Godzilla. While I have been pretty restrictive with my complaints about the human characters, I can't deny, even the Toho movies had more engaging humans to watch. The one human that I genuinely felt a connection with was Bryan Cranston's character in the 2014 movie, but then they kill him off way too soon. Plus, the one person that I do kinda wish had more screen time was the dad from King of the Monsters. Like, he wasn't great or anything, but he was one of the only few humans that I still kinda liked, and he was barely in this movie. Hell, I didn't even care about the human villains. Did you? No, and it feels like neither did the writers because the two main ones died because of Kong and Mechagodzilla. Like, they just killed them like they were nothing. I get they were only here to help the story advance, but Jesus. Again, I think the human plot in this movie is fine, but it definitely could have been leagues better. When it comes to the monsters, there's only 3 main ones to go off of. I've already explained how much I love this version of Godzilla in my Leftovers video, but this is the first time we've seen this Godzilla act like a complete motherfucker. He's ruthless in this movie. It's kind of a nice change of pace, though a part of me does miss the elegance he appeared to have in the first 2 movies, but I understand that if Godzilla and Kong were gonna fight in this movie, one of them had to be causing trouble, which fits better for Godzilla. I love Kong in this movie, and I think making him essentially the Titan protagonist was smart. Even though his name comes second in the title, this is definitely Kong's movie, and you can tell that a lot of care was put into crafting his character. Again, I really like the incorporation of sign language in this movie, and I don't think there's any other movie with Kong that tried to do this. It's super unique. Also, real quick, don't you love how the original movie had Kong first in the title, but this new one puts Godzilla first? Pretty crazy how the times have changed. Visually, Godzilla vs. Kong looks fantastic. The monster fights are really well choreographed and shot, especially during the Hong Kong fight where there's just a huge assortment of neon lights everywhere. It can be pretty trippy to watch, but I do really like how most of the movie looks. It's not too dark like in 2014, and it has a bit more flair to it when compared to King of the Monsters. Also, while I consider the Hong Kong fight to be the best fight in the movie, I do really like the previous boat fight where Godzilla and Kong fight underwater, and on top of the boats. That is so sick. I also really like how, after the boat fight, the humans decide to switch to carrying Kong by flight, and what follows is the cutest possible reference they could have done for one of the most hilariously bad shots from the original King Kong vs. Godzilla. I love it so much. So while I did have a good time with this movie, there are definitely flaws. Starting with Mechagodzilla, while I like what they did with him in the story, I'm not the biggest fan of his design. I don't know, he looks a bit off to me. I get that they were trying to make him fit in with the 2014 Godzilla design, but it just has a pretty unappealing look in my opinion. I'm also not the biggest fan of the claws. Like, why claws? Why not just give him robot hands? Even the Mechagodzilla in Ready Player One had a better design. The other major flaw I have with this movie is the score. It was composed by Junkie XL, and while I love the score he did for one of my favorite movies ever, Mad Max Fury Road, that's like the one soundtrack of his that I'd consider good. Otherwise, the rest of his music library is Amazing Spider-Man 2, Batman v Superman, Scoob, and both the Sonic movies, which I'd argue the score is probably one of the weakest aspects of them. And his Godzilla vs. Kong score is just about the same. Like, it's serviceable, but it's also just not memorable. One of my biggest gripes with the soundtrack is that when Bear McCreary did King of the Monsters, he made a good call to bring back the original Toho Godzilla theme. But for Godzilla vs. Kong, it didn't get brought back. Junkie XL instead did his own rendition of the Godzilla theme, which I wasn't too big a fan of. Again, the man's definitely done good work in the past, but his score for Godzilla vs. Kong just isn't doing it for me. Especially considering the original King Kong vs. Godzilla has one of the greatest soundtracks in the franchise. But I do recognize that comparing Junkie XL to Akira Ifukube is pretty unfair. Apart from those two issues, I don't have a whole lot else to say about this movie, shockingly enough. Again, I just had fun watching it. I loved seeing Godzilla and Kong share the screen again, and while it does have a few issues, I think Adam Wingard and the rest of the team did a solid job with this movie, and I'd easily consider it my favorite movie in the MonsterVerse. Godzilla vs. Kong was a huge success at the box office, which was kinda shocking to see considering the state of the world at the time. With that said, I didn't go see this movie in theaters, mainly because I was paranoid and didn't want to risk catching, the Rona, so I decided to stay home and watch it, and I still had fun. With the box office success, we're not only getting a sequel to this movie, but also a live-action TV series that'll be focusing on Godzilla and a few other titans. Sounds pretty cool. Keen to see where it goes. So yeah, that's all I've got to say for this movie. Go watch Godzilla vs. Kong if you haven't, even though I spoiled the whole thing in this review anyways. Whatever, still go watch Godzilla vs. Kong. It's a lot of fun and I really enjoyed it. I want to give a huge thank you to all the people who've been watching my countless Godzilla videos after all these years, and I'll see you all in the next review. Later.